It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Jarrett Barnes, the owner of BB Sports Media, along with Still Talk. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Hey, I appreciate you inviting me to join. This is exciting. I never have been interviewed by anybody before, so this is kind of cool. So
You're welcome. Can you talk about how you got started in the sports media?
it kind of goes back to, I'd say 2 or 3 years ago when I kind of started discovering like Barstool, like their kind of content and stuff like that. And I started listening to podcasts a lot more. And I started then I came across Pat McAfee, and then I found some other people. And then so I kind of I was inspired to I wanted to start a podcast, but I also wanted to do something on social media because I kind of enjoyed I was starting to enjoy social media a lot more. So I came up with the idea with my brother. BB Sports Media actually stood for Barnes Brothers Sports Media, but I just kept it at BB Sports Media. And my brother kind of decided it wasn't something he really enjoyed that much. So I kind of just stuck with it on my own, started my own podcast and stuff. I was highly influenced by Pat McAfee, Katie Nolan from ESPN, and Zach Schaumler from Strong Opinion Sports. And those guys, and Katie Nolan especially, I find her hilarious and stuff. And Zach Schaumler was one of the more interesting people I listened to because he was I found him when he was still kind of starting. So I found him very early, and then Pat's just a different animal. So they kind of inspired me to do my own kind of thing. Cause now you don't have to have the gatekeepers that work at all the big companies now. They're there, but you can do things on your own now.
Those are the same people that also made me get into it, like Pat McAfee and Zach Schaumler. So that's interesting that we both share that. Can you talk about what you cover in the BB Sports Media?
Well, I kind of cover, the original idea was to cover kind of all sports, but to be completely honest with you, I don't have the same passion for tennis that I have for football and basketball. So it's kind of hard for me to cover sports like golf, tennis, and even I don't even enjoy baseball as much as I enjoy football and basketball. So I really do generally just kind of cover football and basketball. But if it's big enough news, I will report on it and stuff like that. But it's not going to be something that I am highly interested by normally. But it's mainly just football and basketball content that I put out.
What are some of your segments that you have on the BB Media?
That I don't have a lot of segments. I just started a new one that's I'll be doing daily picks and stuff like that because I'm starting to get into, well, I'm not actually starting to get into sports gambling because I'm 20 years old. I'm in college. I can't legally gamble, but I'm intrigued by making picks, and I just want to see what my picks end up. So I do daily picks, and then I also do 90-second news, which is a quick minute and 30-second news pop of things going on in the sports world.
Can you talk about your other podcast, the Stillers Talk?
Yeah, so video, the podcast will pick up and stuff like that. Not that that's a goal of mine, but to possibly do something like that would be very cool. Just because I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania, about an hour south of Pittsburgh. Steelers football has been something that has pretty much influenced my entire life, and I'm a huge fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So just giving myself a platform where I can speak about Steelers football was kind of something I wanted to do, but I also didn't want to do it on my normal podcast and my regular sports page because I don't want people, because like I originally just reported on everything and I don't want people thinking that I'm only reporting on Steelers stuff. So like I figured, oh, I'll start a separate page and a separate podcast just for that, just so that I can keep that kind of separate but still intertwining. So
What are some stuff that you talk about on the Steelers?
I just kind of report on like Steelers news. I give my opinions on certain things like depth chart issues, anything Steelers news related and stuff like that. So
How did you feel about Ryan Switzer getting released by the Pittsburgh Steelers?
um I was a big Ryan Switzer fan. I was a big fan of his back in the day when he was at North Carolina and just absolutely torching the Pitt Panthers defense on punt returns. That's kind of when I discovered him. So I became a big fan of his very early on in his college career. He turned out to be just kind of like a Swiss Army knife athlete down there for North Carolina. So I loved when Pittsburgh picked him up because I was like, oh, this is my guy. I was hoping he'd do something. And then when we lost Antonio Brown, I was like, maybe he steps up, and that never came to fruition. And then I was like, well, he kind of missed his opportunity. And then we started bringing in other guys, and I was like, he just kind of seems like the odd man out. So I was disappointed, but I wasn't really shocked to see Ryan Switzer go. I wasn't really hurt by it either.
How do you feel about Jalen Samuels, the guy from NC State, now on the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Anytime he's on the field, I want them to put him back on the sidelines. I don't like him a whole lot. I think his touches should just go to Anthony McFarland, in my opinion. I think the rotation of running backs should just be James Conner, Anthony McFarland, and Benny Snell. And Jalen Samuels has been great for the Steelers while he's been here, but I think his time in Pittsburgh is slowly going to be coming to a close. I don't think he'll be back next year, to be completely honest with you.
What are some segments that you cover in the Steelers?
Well, it's kind of a new podcast, so I don't really have any segments as of yet. But the plan for me with that podcast is to do 2 episodes per week that are 20 to 30 minutes long, probably more around the 20 minutes long, kind of how I felt about the previous game, a kind of roundup of the AFC North and how things are going in our division, in the Steelers division, and a preview of next week's game as well, and other Steelers news, whether there be injuries, starter, anything like that. So,
can you talk about how you came up with the name of the podcast?
So if you're from southwestern Pennsylvania or the Pittsburgh area, sometimes when you start talking, some of your words come off as kind of lazy, and it's just the Pittsburgh accent. When you say Steelers, sometimes it comes out off as Stillers. And that's kind of where the name clicked in my head, because I looked up and I had a couple names that I thought were great. And then as I Googled them, they were already taking, I was like, well, I was kind of on the right track, but kind of missed the mark. And I was like, oh, this is a name that nobody has yet. So I said, I'll take this one. So it became Steelers Talk.
Who are your favorite players that you've talked about?
I grew up watching Ben, and he's pretty much been the only quarterback that I've ever known for Pittsburgh. So Ben is probably the favorite player that I've talked about on my podcast. I love Juju and everything Juju's about off the field and on the field. I'm a huge fan of. So Juju and Ben are probably my 2 favorites.
What are some of your future plans for both of your podcasts?
Well, the future plan for me is I'm hoping that this is something that I can do full time. It's something that it's a goal of mine to possibly do it as a job one day, to where it's like I can talk into a microphone and do that as my full-time job. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I have about a year and a half left in college, so I'm trying to build it now to see what I can do after college. If it all works out the way I want it to, then I do this for a full-time job. If not, then I plan on probably working in sales in sports, because I'm a sport management major. So,
can you talk about trying to balance both podcasts and going to school? Because I know whenever I was in college, it was hard for me to balance the Sports Talk podcast along with my schoolwork.
It's actually extremely challenging, and a lot of times I kind of have to put off making an episode just due to the fact that I'm either tired or worn down just from school. I also work a full-time job, so that even makes it even harder to balance. So I work about 40 hours a week at a full-time job. I do school, and I have the two podcasts, and I run all the social media on my own. So it is quite a lot to balance. There's not a whole lot of free time, and when there is, um, I like watching Netflix and stuff, but it is a lot to balance. I think I'm starting to do a better job of it. When I first started, I had to take a break, and I honestly probably took a month-long break from it because like I was just like, man, I don't know how people do it because it was a lot. And then over quarantine, I kind of was like, okay, this is what I can do here. I can do this. And I started balancing it a little better. Then I had the summer to figure it out. And now that now that I started another podcast, I'm starting to struggle a little bit with the work life and school balance. But I think I'm starting to figure it out again, and I'm excited.
Can you talk about when are your post dates for both podcasts for my
So
listeners?
yeah, so the post date for the Steelers Talk podcast, the goal here is to get an episode every single Monday. I only have one episode for that podcast out right now, but I do plan on doing have one to release on Thursday. And so the goal is for the Steelers Talk podcast to have one every single Monday and Thursday, and then for the Jared Barnes show every single Monday and Thursday as well.
What advice would you give upcoming and future sports talk podcasts just like myself and just like yourself?
I'd say ignore the noise. When I first started, sometimes when I would say something that was kind of an unpopular opinion, people would see my follower count. People would see that I don't have a huge platform, and they'd be like, "Oh, this guy." They'd say rude things about me, targeting me, and I was just like, I don't know. You guys aren't out doing anything. You guys aren't putting your opinion out there. I'm doing this because it's something I enjoy. I think if we just stay positive and look at the positive side of things, and you just ignore the noise, you'll be okay. So I would just say ignore the noise, block out the hate, and just enjoy connecting with new people. I have connected with so many new people since I have begun doing this. It's insane. I have made more friends in the last 6 months doing podcasts and stuff than I probably have in the last 6 months over just quarantine and stuff. So I just block out the noise and enjoy connecting with people, and just enjoy your time talking on a mic, and come into your sports shows and your sports talk prepared. Like, it's always better to not fly by the seat of your pants and know what you're talking about, because it's going to make you sound better on a mic. It's going to make you sound more professional. And yeah.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on both of your podcast platforms?
So the Jared Barnes Show, which is my main podcast, you can find that pretty much anywhere podcasts are available, and you can find highlights from that podcast on my YouTube at BB Sports Media. And then the Steelers Talk podcast, you can find on Spotify if you just search Steelers, STILLERS Talk. And if you just search that, you should be able to find it.
Thank you again, Jarrett, for your interview, and best of luck in both of your podcasts and sports media coverage.
Hey, thank you so much for bringing me on, Brandon. It means a lot. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. You can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Jarrett, for your interview, and best of luck.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.